Welcome to Whole Lot of Wolves, episode 38 of season 4. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
I'm Paul LePage.
It's Danny on socials again tonight.
Hello, hello.
And boy, guys, not that much to really talk about. Just, your standard 5-1 defeat at the Etihad. It was a rough one, Paul. Rough one to watch.
Well, I think when it was explained last week by the Noisy Neighbours podcast that we're coming up against Haaland, Foden, De Bruyne, Grealish, collectively known as the Shaggers, then effectively we got shagged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yes, we did. And it started off early. Haaland converted a penalty. Aitner collided with the guy in the penalty area. Referee paused for a second, then pointed to the spot. What were your thoughts on that decision, Paul?
I'm not having it on that one. I'm going for the argument that he played the ball, initiated the contact, and the argument is that it was just psychoanalysis at the start of the season on Kalajdzic. But the difference with that is Kalajdzic got took out and the ball was still in play. It was still up in the air. Now, I know we're talking micro moments, but the play had effectively gone past prior to the contact. And if that for me was a genuine come together. So I'm in the camp that it wasn't, or even if it was tremendously soft. And it just pisses you off even more that if they're getting given now, where was this decisions getting granted at the start of the season? It's just, you can't switch between interpretations midway through. It just makes zero sense.
Yeah, interpretations. I feel like that's the key word with this one because it's up to interpretation as to what the foul actually was. And that's ultimately where I think a large majority of the problems are stemming from here with officiating in the EPL is there's so much that's open to interpretation. And, a foul's a foul. I don't know. I don't know. So he scored. It was 1-0. And then a little bit later, here came Haaland again. Great header that was assisted by Rodri. Just really a beautiful play. Wolves had lost the ball at their own half, and Gary O'Neill definitely wasn't happy during the match. What do you think? Was there anything Semedo or anybody on the back line could have done, Danny?
I mean, yes and no. I watched it back once. That's all I could stomach. but it's just there's a lot going on in there, and I think not. I'm one of Kilman's biggest defenders, I suppose, or at least on Twitter. But that's one where he loses Haaland, and then Semedo, who's covering the back post now, suddenly has to pick him up. Not just that, but I saw a few people blaming Semedo because it is a weakness of his. We know he's lost out on some headers at the back post, but at the same time, I mean, my immediate counter argument is, well, that's what happens when your right center back is Nelson Semedo. He can play there, he can sit in that position. So can Doherty to a certain extent, but that's not a first choice right center back. And even if Craig Dawson is there, or even if Kilman is right under him, Haaland's probably still getting to that header. So yes, we can say that there were mistakes made, but also you can say that, even in a perfect scenario, that might still get scored. So I don't know, hard to be overly upset about it.
I think we definitely missed Dawson in this game. I think this was one that really stood out as missing him. And then Paul, right before the half, VAR struck again, but I'm gonna have an unpopular take here, I think, and I'm curious as to what you guys think. I actually think the way this process was handled was the correct way VAR should be handled. Originally, not given a penalty, VAR looked at it and then let the official on the field make the call. I'm for that. I feel like VAR shouldn't be the ones making the decisions. Ultimately, they should be the ones that are saying, okay, there could be something here. Let the guy who made the original call or no call make the call. And that's what happened here. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, it's fair. I think it just gives a air of inevitability to it that all the time those are overturned when they're sent to the screen. It just gives you, you know what's coming. And I think that one, you were trying to look for every little inch of toe that maybe nicked the ball before the contact to the player. It wasn't there. And even to the extent of not seeing any deviation of the ball, even. So I'm more concerned that that's not given by the official on the pitch in the
Originally,
first
yeah.
place. So and especially when you cross comparing the two decisions, the first one gets given straight away, that second one gets looked at and isn't. It's just again, it's questionable the quality on display.
Yeah, I felt like
Yeah,
the second one was a penalty every day.
yeah, I agree with you, especially in the sense that I think it's the way that the process ought to work. I'm
Hmm.
perfectly happy with that, especially if they uh tried to limit the amount of time it took. I think a lot more people would be happy with that. If it didn't take very long for them to take a look at it and then they quickly said, "Hey, I think that there's contact here that you didn't see because you were behind the play a lot." By a decent amount. Can you go look at the monitor? He goes and looks and he says, "You're right. I didn't see that part of it. I'm giving as a penalty." Because even if he's wrong, then it's still that referee's, committing to that call, saying,
Exactly.
"I think
Yeah.
there's a penalty there," which he could do from any view. He might still get it wrong. It's more. I think this one is funny that it comes at the end of the season. It's like in the context of this whole season, and honestly, the whole time that VAR has been in, is that like that's one of those where you're just like, well, it all just like nothing means anything anymore. And so it's like, of course, this is going to get given. I can't really see where the contact is, but is there enough of a mess happening that it's going to get given? Like, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that especially if let's say for a second that that first penalty hadn't happened, like that play just resolved in a totally different way, I think no one would complain about that second penalty. It's
Hmm.
just that that first penalty that is, first of all, incredibly soft. It's contact that happens in the box pretty frequently. And two, like it has like all of the air of like VAR bullshit of like this black box that decisions go into and you don't know what happens. And so then it sets you up for the second one to be salty about the the result. And I think in the end, if they had won 1-0 on that penalty, I think we all would have said, "Yep, that was probably a penalty." And I'm fine with that process. And also City were better that day. So like
Hmm.
that would have been fine. It's just taken in the context of VAR in total, it still ends up being frustrating.
So I went to the Dynamo game with Mike Moser, who listens. He comes to the Houston Wolves meetups. And he brought up one thing that would be interesting with VAR is VAR wouldn't be the ones to call down. It would be up to the referee on the field. He would have a buzzer. So in a case like this, where he's behind the play, he'd buzz VAR to be like, "Hey, I need a little extra help here. Do you have a better view?" From there, they can look and say, "Yeah, there appears to be contact. Why don't you go to the screen?" Or it
Mm-hmm.
could be one of those things they buzz and they go, "Nope, nothing. Okay, move on." And I thought that was actually a pretty smart idea because you're putting it all in the hands of the official, which if there was no VAR, that's what it would be anyways. What do you think of that, Paul?
There's that automated check going on anyway that everything's being reviewed and they've got that audio that even the broadcasters are privy to as well. So does that get switched off in that eventuality and it's solely down to the ref to ask for help? Then maybe, but then you're just worried that it's always going to be used as a crutch and you don't
Mm-hmm.
get over the issue of that VAR wouldn't be in play, wouldn't be needed if the quality of what stood out on the pitch already was better. And I think 99% of fans would say we don't mind the occasional error if overall the standard is higher. I think that's taken as a given. So I just think trying to make it work just defeats the whole thing. It needs to be right, effective out of the box. You can't be messing with something to try and figure it out as we go along. It should be there for a distinct purpose and something that's, again, not down to interpretation.
Let's get La Liga officials in there. I still say, get the English guys out of there. They're biased. So 3-0 halftime, not looking good, guys. I'll be honest. I started my honeydew list early at halftime. And then I look up and whoa, lo and behold, Bellegarde, who's come on at halftime because Lamina, feeling a little bit of a knock, whips in a great cross and Huang converts it. Paul, boy, it felt like, okay, maybe there's a lifeline, right?
I think two things with that. It was good to see Bellegarde get minutes, and from a position that he's probably more familiar with, and an opportunity to see him more centrally placed or within a distinct three of a midfield. So I thought that was a positive step. And just what reinforced that goal for me is you've got to put Wang there and be available for those types of chances, because 9 times out of 10, he puts them away. It's a great finish, but the whole issue of him playing as the 9 is that he might be able to do it against the likes of Luton at home, but stick him against Man City centre backs, it's a totally different scenario altogether. So he needs help more in those scenarios. It probably needs 2 attackers either side, or two players in support of him to get the effectiveness out of him as a 9. So maybe I think that's an area that probably, I think O'Neill probably got tripped up, or he certainly got pepped in that. Again, back to what the noisy neighbours guys said, that I think Pep knew the potential that we posed in that Kovacic and Rodri started, knowing that if he could win the midfield battle, then the rest of it was going to take care of itself. And I think the rest of the lineup, certainly defensively, was played with that in mind, that the only opportunities we would get would probably be on the counter and at pace. So he certainly had those bases covered with the players that he picked. So really it kind of played into his hands, probably a little naive as far as O'Neill goes, but sometimes you just got to dust yourself down and say you outperformed on the day, which again, for a coach in his first season coming up against Guardiola, that stuff tends to happen.
So 3-1, Danny, maybe a comeback 2 minutes later and it's gone.
Yeah. It felt at that point, I immediately was getting flashbacks to I guess it was 4-1 that they won. That was the De Bruyne show.
Game. Yeah.
Because somewhere in those 4 goals, Dendoncker scored. It was the all Belgian game. I think he might have scored to make it 1-1. I don't remember, but yeah, it was just one of those where it's like, oh no, we are playing a really good team right now. So like if you let your guard down for even a second after you score a goal, then you're probably gonna get one right back. It was unfortunate, and it's funny. I've seen some interesting discussion about Kilman's role in that, and like, does Craig Dawson stop that attack? It's an interesting thing to think about, because I think that Craig Dawson could just as easily get spun there. Like that's not really, we've seen it even against lesser strikers than Haaland. But it's just one of those things where you have the feeling that Craig Dawson has that bit of like old school center back about him, where he'll just dive in and stop it before it develops. That's like one of those clever things that, like, I don't know. He's not even that old. Why am I saying he's like old? He's younger than I am. But it's like these sort of more old school defenders, the way it's like, I'm going to take this out so early that I can't even get a yellow card for it because I'm not even the last defender yet. Like, I'm going to cut this out so early. I'm going to commit a foul. It's going to be a foul, but I'm just going to stop it early. And that's something that Kilman, because of how technical he is, wants to let the play develop and try to limit the player and try to nick in and find the ball. And sometimes against someone as clinical as Haaland, you don't have that luxury.
And I mean,
Some
ultimately, Holland's one of the 5 best players in the world.
Yeah.
So, like, people that are like shitting on Wolves for the performance and everything. I mean, look, is it unfortunate? Yeah, you don't like to lose like that. But it's not like this was a 5-0 defeat to Sheffield.
I must admit, there was one comment on Twitter that I saw by someone a lot more funnier than me that said Man City ruled out the Wolves' goal quicker than even VAR could, which I thought was hilarious.
That's really good. And very true.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Holland got taken off. He seemed not too happy. He was going for those 5 goals for sure. Honestly, I saw him being called a spoiled brat and stuff on the shows. I'm okay with it. You know
Yeah.
what? How many times do you get an opportunity to score 5 goals?
Well, also he gets the right to behave that way because of
Mm-hmm.
how good he is.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's just, I don't know, kind of haters. I'm sure the fans were upset he was coming out too. They would have liked to have seen it. But anyways, he comes out. Julian Alvarez scores the 5th goal. If we were going to give up a fifth, at least it was him, Paul, and not Matthias Nunes.
Yeah, I think be grateful for small mercies in what could have been an even worse day.
that was my only prayer going into those last,
Oh,
whatever
it
it
got
was, 20,
dicey there at the
15,
end. I was
20
like,
minutes.
please no Dumbo. Please no Dumbo. We wouldn't have heard the end of that.
He would
Uh
just score some horrible looking goal and then celebrate in front of the fans.
yeah.
I
And then
couldn't handle it.
somebody would have gotten thrown out of that game in the stands and
Yeah.
Lord only knows. So, um overall, Danny, concerning performance or just look, it's near the end of the season and we ran up against one of the top 2 teams in the league.
There's just not much to say about that game in a lot of ways. It's not really a game you learn a ton from. I think there are plenty of losses that you can look back and say like even losses that felt really bad at the time. Like I think thinking about like that 3-0 loss to West Ham in December, that's one that felt awful at the time. Felt like we were
Mhm.
doing okay in that period and then just like thought that West Ham would not be that challenging, and then we just couldn't lay a glove on them. But even that one, I think like you learn a ton from that. The way that we set up and the way that they sort of took their chances. This is one that you don't learn a ton from. Yes, we have a lot of players back from injury, but uh, not all of them seemingly can do a full 90 minutes. And the key ones are that Santi Bueno can't start and Craig Dawson can't play at all. So the fact that you have to have someone like Nelson Semedo or Doherty or someone else play as center back or go with a back four, which you probably don't want to do in this game anyway, that
Mhm.
sort of it's not like it puts an asterisk on it for Man City's sake, but in terms of like learning things from it, I don't know that you can go back and look at that performance as a whole and say that this means anything in particular about the final 2 games or about next season.
Paul, who's ready for this season to be over more? The players or the fans?
I think there's probably a fair argument for both, just to protect those hamstrings from both sides,
Absolutely.
players and fans. I think the less I hear about tweaking a hamstring all the way through the summer, but it's probably going to come and haunt in the Euros or something like that. So I don't think we might be able to get away with it at all this summer.
Or if they come to the US and dealing with the Florida humidity. I mean,
Or
I
the
hate to
Maryland
be that guy.
humidity.
Or the Maryland humidity. I still don't think they're coming, guys. I think this is all crap to get South
I'll believe
Korea
it
to
when I
pay
see
more
it. Just
money.
like when
That's what I
you don't
am.
believe a transfer until they're holding the Wolves shirt. I won't
Yeah.
believe they're coming to Annapolis till I see, Mario Lamina eating a crab cake.
Yeah. I know everybody's excited and getting pumped, and I'm just I'm looking at it at my calendar, but I haven't even, and normally I like to put placeholders. I haven't even put a placeholder on it. That's how not confident I am in it. But so yeah, it is what it is. 2 games left. Hopefully one of those is winnable. I don't know. We'll see. But there was a little bit of news that just dropped in today. We're recording this on Monday. And that was, Paul, that there's going to be an old friend at West Ham. And I use friend very loosely.
That's right. Mr. Lopetegui is finally going to have to move out of Wolverhampton and make his way down to the big smoke for this premier job that he's been waiting for. So we'll
You
see
don't
what
think he's
next.
going to stay and commute down to London?
Yeah, but it's possible. I doubt it somewhat, but yeah, it'll be an interesting period, I think, to see how this plays out and what impact he'll have.
I still do feel like we do have to give credit to Lopetegui for keeping us up last year in really bad circumstance. But I kind of feel like this is also going to be a fun fixture now to especially at Molyneux. And for the players as
Yeah.
well. The players are probably going to be motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's as much bad blood per se between them and Lopetegui as fans like to imagine. But at the same time, I mean, yeah, how can you not want to show, how far you've come and what you're capable of in that kind of fixture? The only thing I hope for next year with these fixtures against West Ham are that we don't end up in some weird pseudo rivalry with West Ham fans like we seem to have with Bournemouth fans. Maybe this is just me rotting my brain on social media, but it's like because Bournemouth, I guess, got some stick for firing Gary O'Neill and they weren't doing that well. Then as soon as they started doing well, then suddenly there was beef between them and Wolves, even though like no one ever cared. I don't know. Like it was kind
Yeah.
of funny that they had fired him and that Gary O'Neill was doing well, but no one expected that. And then by the same token, I hope that West Ham fans don't take us dumping on Lopetegui because he left 4 days before the season started to mean that we have beef with them in particular. Because nothing could be more boring than that kind of weird Twitter beef
Yeah.
that is based on literally nothing.
And if he had left before the preseason, I don't think there would be no beef at all. It would have been like, hey, thanks for the job. See ya. It was the
Yep.
fact that he quit on the team. And I think as it's gone on and we've got to know these players and see how they play, that's what's been frustrating because you could see it's a young, hungry team with great attitudes. And he just flat out told him to your face you weren't good enough for me. So I feel like as the season's gone on, the hate's kind of festered, Paul.
Yeah.
There's a certain element of what might have been in that it was more the case of, well, why isn't he backing himself to figure out a way? If you're that quality of a coach, then even with the players at your disposal, you should be able to turn those into a team that can compete. And I think you should have probably had some foresight to think, well, if there was these transfers kicking around, we may have had that last minute splurge thanks to the Nunes deal going through and the snowball effect that had on incoming. So there's an element of that to me, that it's kind of he did walk out, he didn't back himself, whereas O'Neill effectively did the complete opposite. He came in and said, I've got something to prove, and this is how I'm going to do it. And by and large, he has done. So I think that's where the sentiment comes, and the positivity you can take from the season is he was able to do that at such a short turnaround. What if we get back in the summer? What if we get a full pre-season with a decent squad like we've got with some incomings? It could be further special times.
It is just funny though, because it's not like West Ham has always backed David Moyes.
Yeah, they've not had the you're right, they've not had the most fluid of ownerships in terms of support either, but sometimes you get lucky and you could sell a Declan Rice and replace it with 3 or 4 players, and that transforms a team. So there's that factors into it as well.
Well, one player that may have kept Lopetegui around, I don't know. His signing was made permanent, Paul, so we had a happy ending to bromance with an option to buy. Tommy Doyle staying, 4.3 million pounds. Great deal. 50% sell on clause. And I think I saw the next two summer transfer windows. There's a buyback. So essentially, not this one, but the next summer, that would be the buyback. What do you think, Paul? What are you expecting?
Absolute no brainer. Certainly a player that can develop and kick on. And I'm hoping that again you're drinking out of the glass that's half full, but you're hoping that such a early announcement is a clue that they've got all of their ducks lined up in a row and the finances are squared away. That if they can do this now, then hopefully it's a sign of more to come. So whatever angle you look at it, there's a ton of positives.
Yeah, that is the good question. By making it official now, does it count on this year's ledgers or is it going to be next year's FFP?
I can't remember if it was June or July 1st it kicks in, but I'm guessing that means it will be next year. So that means the it's accounted for then. Or yeah, I generally don't know if they did have that reported wiggle room. Again, depending on where we finish in the league, that may have been the budget that covers it for this season. I'd have to look at the day and see what it is, but it could have an impact.
Danny, wouldn't it be so Wolves if Tommy Doyle just has an amazing breakout season, like a mini Cole Palmer, and then because Man City owns a buyback option next summer, they lose him?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. That's the one piece of reporting I wish we had, which as far as I know is not out there, is what is that amount on the buyback? Because the only person, I think Liam Keane sort of alluded to it, but just sort of said like it's enough,
Yeah.
basically like it's a high enough number that probably City won't do it. And also like Tommy Doyle would have to have a really great season in order for them to want to do it. But it would make me feel much more comfortable if they're like, and the buyback is 40 million. Because then you'd be like,
Right.
okay, well, that's fine. Like, if he does so well that he's worth 40 million, then like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if
But if
it's
like 15, then it's kind of like,
and you're like, okay, come on. But that being said, I'm still not that worried because I just look at it from City's point of view. Which City players he displacing in midfield, or even of the midfielders on their bench, apart from Mateus Nunes, I suppose. But like, what's who's the one who he's gonna go replace? And I don't see that happening, even with a pretty big season next year. If he were to really blow up, are they going to see that buying him back for whatever it is, let's say 25 million is sort of a middle ground number, is better than whatever they can get in the market? Probably not. I don't know. I'm not particularly concerned.
all I could think that would cause that really would be if all these FFP allegations finally came to a head, they decide whatever they're going to, and it meant Man City was banned from Europe for a couple years and got sent down to the Championship or League One, in which case all their guys would leave. Then they're probably knocking for Tommy Doyle. But then does he want to go there? Paul, it's a 4-year contract. Do you think Tommy Doyle is here for 4 years or longer?
Longer. I'm
Wow.
going my bad predictions, bad takes are going to go all in that he gets some type of England recognition in that time.
Future Wolves and England captain, Paul.
The England captain portion may be a stretch. The Wolves one I could be in on. I see him in the whole England thing is I see him in the vein of like a James Ward-Prowse, where there's a few midfielders of a similar profile, and it's just whether that slot opens up.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Whole Lot of Wolves is looking to expand its squad, so if you enjoy working in the creative capacity and share a passion for Wolves and graphic design, you could be the perfect addition to our growing crew. If you're interested in learning more, drop us a note via email at hello@wholelotofwolves.com or reach us on X at WLWpod.
Well, guys, it is the final Wolves home game of the year. Wolves against Crystal Palace, Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And back as always, when we talk about Crystal Palace, is Matt Sampson who's with the Palace supporters group in DC. Matt, it seems like it's been a while since we played you guys. What's been going on?
Sure. Hey, first of all, good day to you fellas as always. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's definitely been a minute from was it match week 4 in September to now match week 37 coming up at the weekend here. Yeah, it's been an interesting season for Palace, kind of one where we'll sort of end up, I think, in our, normalish spot in the top half of the bottom half of the table with a point total somewhere, in the mid 40s. But it's kind of been a very odd road in getting there. Roy Hodgson, our manager, during that first fixture, started okay. Probably should have been let go in December after a terrible run of form, and then kept doing like just enough to save himself. But he kind of lost everyone from the fan base to his few supporters in the front office with a terrible February that saw us not only lose 4-1 at our hated rivals Brighton, but also had him put Michael Olise in his iffy hamstring in a match when we were already down 3-0. Olise re-injured himself after about 10 minutes. Roy, obviously after years of being a great caretaker of the club, was given a graceful exit, but he was gone shortly thereafter. So though in-game Oliver Glasner, who arrived from Austria with a resume that included a Europa League title, what all Palace was asking of him was, to keep us safe, which is certainly no small feat in coming into a new league while installing a new system. And to be honest, it didn't really start out all that great. It was an initial win over Burnley, which a lot of teams obviously get, but then a loss to Tottenham, a terrible draw with Luton where we conceded and the equalizer in the 96th minute, and a draw at Forest and a loss to Bournemouth. So this wasn't a case of failing to pick up points because you're playing teams at the bottom of the league. It was, at the top of the league, we're really struggling against the bottom. But there were positive signs, I think, in a 4-2 loss to Manchester City. The match was level at halftime. I think that game built as much confidence in the team as anything. They saw more things work against a great team in City than they had in the previous losses and draws, against teams near the relegation zone. And all that confidence kind of came on display a week later with a win, over Liverpool at Anfield. They really haven't looked back since. The draw at Fulham this past weekend was kind of the only stumble, if you want to call it that. And I think that was as much a result of playing 3 games in less than a week than anything.
So, Matt, are you putting that recent good form, including today's, what we'll call a 4-0 shagging, which we've talked about ourselves today, is that down to the new coach and the setup, or a little of the team playing with more freedom, closing out the end of the season? How's it all come together?
Sure. The thing is, after that loss to City, we were only, 5 points clear of the relegation zone, albeit with a game in hand at the time. But, it was getting pretty nervy around Selhurst Park then. And that win over Liverpool, I think, coupled with some helpful results with teams below them in the table, kind of let everybody exhale a little bit. But anyways, for me, I'd say that the uptick in form is a combination of, the players feeling good in Glasner's system now, everything from the tactics to, the greater demands that you read that he's been putting on them as far as fitness and everything. I think to what you were saying, the freedom of knowing that they are safe. I think there's, a little bit of relaxed, nature that comes with that, and a little bit of, maybe joy that springs out of that. And then thirdly, a return to full health for Michael Olise and Eberechi and that, that third point can't be understated. These are 2 players that the big clubs across Europe will be calling about this summer. And prior to this most recent 5-game unbeaten run, I think they'd been on the pitch together for only about a half dozen games this year. So, they're finding each other. They're finding the back of the net. They're finding their teammates, most notably Jean-Philippe Mateta, who's been brilliant for the last month and a half. And I think in addition to that, there's just a whole mentality. There's been a whole mentality reset about the club. It's a kind of a complete 180 from where things ended with Roy. word would be in his press conference and talk about the difficulty of having to play a top 6 team. And prior to this match against Man U today, Glasner's press conference, he was asked about not having lost in his last 4 games. And his reply is, well, our goal is not to lose the rest of our games either for the rest of the season. So the players look unbelievably confident in the system, in their teammates, and in their ability to win games. And that's been just producing some wonderful football.
So do you anticipate similar lineup and shape from what you guys threw at Man United today?
Yeah, most definitely. It was funny. Obviously a lot changes over a season, but it was really bizarre to look back at the team and the formation from when we played Wolves in September. Assuming everyone comes out of the Man U game unscathed, Palace will likely only start 4 players this weekend who started in that first match, and that's assuming that Mark Gahey, who only returned from injury and played about 20 minutes today, is in the starting 11. So they switched to a 3-4-3 formation that I've grown to love over the past 2 months. Obviously, with the results, it's fun. We've got wing backs streaking up the flanks all over the pitch. It's really been just a kind of a revelation to watch. But as far as the 11, I think it'll be Joachim Andersen, who captained us today. In the back, along with Gahey, I think they'll give him the start. He's also fighting for a spot with England in the Euros this summer, and then the American Chris Richards as the 3 across the back. Midfield will feature the midfield 4 will feature 2 of our January acquisitions. Daniel Munoz at right wing back, and Adam Wharton came out of the championship. He'll be in one of the central spots with Tyrick Mitchell at the left wing back spot, and old steady, old reliable Will Hughes in the middle of the midfield next to Wharton. And then up front, there's no reason to think it won't be Elise on the left, Mateta in the middle, and Eze on the right.
All right, guys. Thanks for Matt Sampson for coming on and giving us a preview of that Crystal Palace Wolves matchup that's on Saturday. Paul, this might be the final chance for some points on the season. Do you think they can do it?
I'm pretty negative at this point, which I don't know. It's like this season is like really petered out, and I'm hoping it's totally the opposite, but it's got such an air of that end of the Bruno Lage season that I'm just looking at this fixture thinking, A, then they're always a bit of a bogey team, and B, it's just going to be a case of they could come with some freedom to play, and we're not in any type of really a rich vein of form. So it's just got that horrible 2-0 home defeat about it. But then on the flip side, I'm thinking, well, come on, Wolves. It's the last home game of the season. You've got no pressure. Stick a 5-2-3 out there and attack them and see what happens. So it could go either way. But if I was to look at it black and white right at the moment, I'd be pretty doubtful of a positive outcome.
Danny, we're finally getting healthy, and Neto's been mentioned. Do you think we actually do see Neto one of these last 2 games?
I don't know. I think Neto probably makes the bench this time, but I don't think he gets minutes. That's based on me knowing nothing about his medical situation right now. But the way that they've been talking about it, and who knows, maybe that's just press stuff, Maybe they're just saying that he's so close to coming back just to allure people like Arsenal. He could play at any minute. In fact, we're just saving him for you. He's fine. He hasn't been injured for weeks. No, I just think they're going to be extra careful with him, especially if he wants to move. And normally I'd say, well, the player's really going to want to play, but at the same time, yes, he wants to make that Euro squad, but no, he does not want to get injured before the Euros. So the middle ground is they're going to be cautious, and he might make the bench and not play. But that, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, he'll get paid a lot more money signing with another team than playing for Portugal in the Euros.
Yeah.
Paul, what type of lineup changes do you anticipate for this matchup? Bellegarde coming in, starting?
Potentially. I think I'm definitely of the view that they've got to stick with the 5 at the back, and seems they're at home, and hopefully with the players that they've got available, they can run with those 3 attackers. And if it is Wang centrally and Cunha and Bellegarde either side, that'd be nice. I still think there's a potential for a 4-2-3-1 with this team, but I just don't think he's in a position to try it at the moment.
So let's look at the prediction standings. There are 2 games left, which means 6 possible points. Unfortunately, Paul, 2 games to go. You have been relegated already with your 16 points. The most you can get is 22, which, lo and behold, there is a 3-way tie for second with 23 points. What do you have to say for yourself, Paul?
I'm gonna blame the board for moving the goalposts. I'm gonna blame financial fair play of having to raise my daughter's allowance. And I'm gonna blame my slippery Spanish media agent type person for not painting me in a much better prediction league light.
I will say, though, Paul did get 3 points in 2 games. In one of them, I'm sure he was very glad that he got 3 points on. The 2-0 win over the shit.
Yeah. That is probably the whole highlight of the season.
Including calling Cunha for one of those goals. Anyway, so Danny, you're in first place with 25, and then me, Alex, in the guest spot with 23 points. So what you got? Let's hear it.
Yikes. That's so much
No
pressure
pressure.
up at the top now. Yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth. Like Paul, it's hard to be particularly optimistic. The one thing I keep thinking about, I mean, obviously, as we're recording, we've already seen, of course, the 4-0 result for Palace that happened today. I just think like Palace have had such a nothing season until they got this new manager and they started getting people back from injury. And I just feel like normally in previous years, this Palace team would have fully been on the beach. They would have been on the beach a month ago.
Yeah.
Sitting in 12th, just not caring for anything in the world. But I feel like in a lot of ways, their season just got started. And I feel like even though they don't really have anything to play for, what they have to play for is like salvaging any kind of positive feeling out of this season. Meanwhile, we've had the high already and we're slumping. And in fact, I think with a win, they could go over us on goal difference. I really hate this one. I want to be optimistic. I'll go for a 2-1 Wolves win and
2-1.
really desperately hope that I'm right.
Alex is going with the 2-2 draw. Paul, what are you going with?
Let's put some positivity on it. If I predict a defeat, then we might win. So I'm going that 2-0 loss.
2-0 loss. I like it. He's now that he's relegated, let's go for it. You know, here's the interesting thing about the league in general. Yeah, Palace just threw up a 4-0 win, but that doesn't mean it's going to carry over, especially at Molineux. So
Also, it was
actually,
only United.
yeah, it
Let's
was
just
only
say
United.
that.
Yeah.
Very mid-table. Very
Extremely.
mid-table.
Yeah, United who absolutely hate their manager. You know what? I think Wolves try and have this season go out with a bang. I think the fans will be in this one, hopefully to like just really appreciate what this team's done this year in hard chances. YOLO. 3-0 Wolves win.
Wow.
Brave.
Danny owes me a big old drink if I get 3 points off this one.
No Stupid Questions is presented by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. So whether you're celebrating a Wolves victory or winding down after a day at work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of California's wine country with every sip. For a limited time, head to esfuerzowines.com and use the promo code WOLVES for a 15% discount on your wine purchases. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their products responsibly and in moderation.
All right, Danny. Alex isn't here today, so you get to lead us in our favorite segment.
Yes, that's right. It's time for New Stupid Questions. As always, you can reach out to us through various means. Most people tweeted us on Twitter, which I will continue to call it that. It also has the name of a letter of the alphabet, which looks very suspect on your browser history. But you can also email us at hello@wholelotofwolves.com, which is what Drew in Pittsburgh did. And he asks, for the last game of the season at Anfield, you can have one of these players for one game in their current situation. Messi, Ronaldo, or Adama. I feel like this one is for Josh.
I have not met Drew, and I love him because he is clearly a follower of the show to put Adama in the same question as Messi and Ronaldo.
So I think he's saying in their current situation, meaning as they are right now. So we're not talking about prime Messi, not prime Ronaldo.
But Messi just got through obliterating another team. I mean, I love Adama. Everybody knows I am the biggest Adama stan. Oh, but I'd go with Messi. I'd go with Messi.
Yeah, see, I think, for me, the season's already basically over. What does it matter if we win at Anfield? I'd love it. And would I love it even more if it was Adama hitting a goal from the corner of the box right into the near top corner? Yes, I would. So I'd go with Adama just because it would be way more fun.
I still think Adama would be good in Gary O'Neill's system. I kind of hope he finds his way out of Fulham. Ultimately, I think his best landing spot would be MLS, where he'd become a god out in America.
Oh my God.
I mean,
speaking of which, this is a full-on tangent, but I think we have time for it. I don't know if either of you are on Reddit, but somebody recently asked how well would Hwang do in an NCAA Div 1 soccer team, and people were just like, all the Americans, of course, like Reddit is largely Americans. There's like, you're making us look so bad, embarrassing us. It's like, it's not even a question. He'd score like 200 goals a season.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
And it's like that with Adama in the MLS. It's just like, you don't understand how much faster he is than every person in the MLS.
Yeah. That's like the people who say, "Oh, I think the women's national team could win the men's World Cup." Get the fuck out of here. Now,
what do you think, Paul? Messi, Ronaldo, or Adama?
Right at this point in time, I'm going Messi. Just drop him in that number 10 and let him cook. I think even at, what is he, 36, 37, he could still do a little bit of damage. At least we might have a free kick threat as well.
All right, moving along. Andy Thomas reached out to us on Twitter. If you had to create a starting five for a basketball team out of current Wolves players, who would you put in each position?
So I think you definitely need Saw in the post because you need that crazy guy in the post. So he's in there. I could see Toady playing in the post as well. So there's your two post players. Let's see. Neto, because you need one of those guys who's just the alpha, I'm going to score, and has to do a heat check sometimes where he's shooting from nearly half court. I think Tommy Doyle would be a really good point guard. And then the nice 3-and-D guy on the wing, I'm going to say that's a good João Gomez spot. Although, well, no, João Gomez is a little small. Let's go Lamina. Lamina would be a good 3-and-D guy, I think.
Yeah, I was having a good time trying to think like, okay, but let's just imagine all these players are like elevated to NBA height. Doesn't mean they all have to be 7 feet tall, but like, the ones who are 5'6", they get to be like at least 5'10" for the day. The one that I think would be the most fun to see is Ryan Nori, who is just going to be weaving around everyone. He will probably get injured, but that's the one I want to see.
He'd be the first guy off the bench, I feel like, and would be one of those little defensive specialist who suddenly out of nowhere can score like 19 points and 6 assists in a playoff game, and you're like, where the hell did that come from? That's Eight Nuri on the basketball court.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought of Lamina immediately just for his physical presence, but then I remembered that training video that they put out where it took him like 15 tries to make a single shot. So I don't know that he makes it on. All right. We also have Todd DeWitt, who frequent contributor, reached out to ask probably me if they were to remake Lord of the Rings trilogy, which Wolves player would Frodo be? Would be Frodo, and which would be Saruman? Two very specific characters, which is really kind of interesting for this moment.
João Gomez is Frodo, and that's an easy pick. I feel like maybe Frodo at the beginning of the Journey of the Fellowship, not at the end when he turned into emo Frodo because the ring was carrying him down. As for Sauron, how about Boubacar Traore?
Yeah, it's tough to pick a villain out of the current squad. There's no one I dislike enough to think of them as Saruman.
Yeah.
Fabio Silva. Fabio.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Now we're gonna get really deep into this weird comparison because to me, Fabio Silva is like the tragic figure of Gollum, you know. He started off well-meaning, and you even once you understand his background, you have to root for him. But at the same time, the things that have happened to him, getting thrown into the team so early, us having to lean on him, a few poor loans have really twisted him in some strange ways. So that's where I'd slot him in.
So for doing that, Potence would be an orc, and then Matheus Nunes would be a Uruk-hai, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, Matheus Nunes kind of has a bit of that look. I don't know what it is, but yeah. I don't know. So getting back to the question, I guess I always like João Gomez as Frodo. He's so clean-faced, but I do think I immediately thought of Ryan Eight Nuri just as a person who would let his body fall apart as or honestly, Lamina in the same way would push himself to the absolute limit while his body and mind get destroyed in service of the greater good. So I go with Lamina there. Saruman, who knows from this squad? I think that the most fun casting for Saruman would probably be Jose Sa. He's got a great beard for it. He doesn't have the temperament for it whatsoever, but it would be the most fun.
Well, maybe the temperament when he threw the orb off the tower.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so
we're real big Lord of the Ring nerds here.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe during the summer when we have nothing better to talk about, we're going to have to do our crossover podcast where we spend a decent amount of time just talking about my knowledge of Lord of the Rings.
And how it compares.
Comparing
I could see Eight Nuri as Frodo
character.
and then João Gomez as Samwise. That'd be fun.
Yes. João Gomez has a very Samwise vibe to him. He's very humble, All right. What else do we have? We have King Wolf 84 on Twitter says Jackie Oatley, one of our favorite commentators, having to commentate on a game with a 4-hour plus rain delay in Houston yesterday because of the storms. What board game would be played in the interval to keep you entertained?
Well, to me, automatically you think of a 4-hour game. I mean, obviously Monopoly pops up and everything. I am a huge Risk guy, and not just original Risk. I'm talking Risk 2210 AD, Lord of the Rings Risk, which I have, Game of Thrones Risk, played Star Wars Risk, Walking Dead Risk. So yeah, I would break out one of those for sure.
All right, well, that dovetails nicely with my answer. You're really going to like this because you probably haven't heard of this game, but it's called War of the Ring, and it is based on Lord of the Rings and shares some mechanics with Risk, but you can win either militarily or by either corrupting the ring bearer or, of course, destroying the ring. And it's actually an incredibly faithful adaptation of the books. So this really is our mini podcast on Lord of the Rings. But that
Does
would be
that
my
have
answer.
Balmadier or whatever his name is too?
Tom Bombadil, yes,
Mhm.
he is in this game.
Wow.
Yes. And in fact, that game probably takes around 4 hours if you've never played before. If you have played and you know what you're doing, then probably you can get it down to a tight 2 hours. But in terms of taking up that 4 hour time slot in the rain delay, perfect game for that, and especially obviously for this podcast now.
Mhm.
Paul, any favorite board games, especially on the longer side?
I wouldn't take the board games, but you got to have some Uno in there.
Yeah.
Definitely. Got to be some Uno. And then all variations of it as well.
Well, and that
I'd
one
like to-
basically takes 4 hours.
I'd like to see the Uno meme with Lopetegui where it says stay at Wolves and coach current roster or draw 26 with them then giant hand on there.
Yeah.
So funny thing about Risk, I was playing it with two of my cousins who we've played it before, really enjoy this game, and then my little second cousin who's like 10 years old decide he wants to play. And we're taking it easy on him early, and he kind of gets on a little roll and he starts talking some major trash. Oh, I'm winning, I'm kicking you guys' butt. And I was like, all right. He was out of the game 2 turns later, and that was when I officially taught my cousin, who's 10 years old, the fuck around, find out. No mercy.
Wow. I don't know that I've ever met someone who takes Risk that seriously.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We have me and my friends have an annual Risk game around Christmas every year.
Well, next time we all get together, we'll have to bring our board games.
Yep. Lord of the Rings
If
Risk,
Wolves come to
Danny.
Maryland,
I got it.
we can play some War of the Ring.
Whilst eating crab cakes.
Yes.
Right.
I don't know if I can procure crab cakes to have in our house, but I'll do my best. All right, and that's it for No Stupid Questions. And as always, it's brought to you by Esfuerzo Wines, showcasing 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. Go to esfuerzowines.com and use promo code WOLVES for a 15% discount on your wine order. I am literally thinking about doing that tomorrow so that I can get prepared for the warmer weather that's coming, get some crisp whites.
So thanks to Danny on the socials, Alex producing, and you, the listener, as without you, there isn't a show. If you've yet to do so, please give us a 5-star review and some nice comments on your podcast platform of choice. That goes such a long way to helping with our exposure and growing the podcast to a brand new audience. So this time next week, it is the final countdown as we preview the last match of the season away at Liverpool. So as we walk into that, everyone, just be proud. Tell everyone that you meet up the mighty Wolves.
You can get exposure for your business like Esfuerzo Wines have enjoyed throughout this year. Just email hello@wholelotofwolves.com for both segment and main show sponsor opportunities for the upcoming 5th season.